Hey everyone, in this video we're going to be discussing the greatest UFC finishing streaks of all time. So with that, if you like random videos on a random YouTube channel, like, subscribe, comment below, do all that good stuff, let's go ahead and dive right in. So why are we making this video? Of course, because UFC 317 ended with this man here, Ilia Topuria, winning the vacant lightweight championship of the world and defeating Charles Oliveira in spectacular KO fashion, thus making a statement. And a lot of people are talking about the greatest finishing streak of all time, even though it's only three. So if you say the greatest three-fight winning streak of all time, probably because of who this individual fought and of course how he finished these three individuals. So you're talking about Volkanovski, Max Holloway coming off of BMF, and then Charles Oliveira, a former champ. Incredible here. But where would this rank in all-time history of UFC? That's what we're going to do in this video here. But every time we're talking about the greatest, we have to lay some ground rules. How do you rank the greatest? And you have to look at the quality of opponents, of course, and is it the opportunity to win or defend a title? I think that's very important. And then, of course, the length of the streak. So here we go, diving in. But before I dive into the UFC finishing streaks, I had to throw in a few that's outside of UFC just because they were just amazing and fantastic. Starting with an OG in the MMA world, that's Bas Rutten. Bas Rutten ended up having, I got to count all this here. Actually, I got to move this, make this bigger so you guys can see it. He ended up having a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 fight win streak, all via submission or KO, thus cementing Bas Rutten as one of the OGs and one of the greatest MMA fighters of all time. Unfortunately, he was never able to get into the UFC or even in Pride. He ended up fighting in Pancrase most of his career, and there's some really solid fighters on this list here, like a Frank Shamrock at the time, Guy Mesner, even Murray Smith. So I did have to do a shout out to Bas Rutten here. Another individual, of course, is the Last Emperor, Fedor Emelianenko, one of the greatest of all time that never fought in the UFC, unfortunately. And he strung 2 finishing streaks, right? So he had one here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And then I believe this was 8 over here. But again, fought mostly in Pride. And yeah, but still one of the greatest of all time. Had to at least provide an honorable mention. Then another individual, one of my favorite fighters of all time, that's Dan Henderson, Hendo himself. He had a very, very solid 4-fight win streak here and finishing streak here, topping it off with beating Fedor. I remember that fight clearly. It was crazy that he KO'd Fedor. And then Shogun was a unanimous decision, but was fight of the night, right? Was fight of the night. Went the distance on there, but it was, I'm sorry, a 3-fight win streak, a finishing streak, but ended with Mauricio Hua fighting in that crazy. If you guys want to see an amazing fight, UFC 139, and that was his debut in UFC. Maybe not debut. I think he went UFC and then left and came back. Anyway. Shout outs to Dan Henderson. And then finally here for a outside honorable mention, that's Chris Cyborg, one of the OG and greatest female fighters of all time. Fight mostly in Invicta here. Did a little UFC stint for those 3 fights you can see right there, but went on a crazy finishing streak here in what, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 fight win streak, finishing streak. And yeah, that's why I had to provide an honorable mention. So let's go ahead and move on here into the UFC, which, crazy enough, doing this video here, I found out that some of the GOATs of all time, whether it's, a GOAT or the greatest in their weight division, don't really string along that many great finishing streaks, including these 4. Again, very surprising to me. Kind of surprising, kind of not surprising. But GSP, one of the greatest of all times. Some people would say the greatest of all time. He never strung a lot of finishing streaks. He did a lot of decisions, dominated fights, in a sense, much like Mighty Mouse, right? But I was thinking Mighty Mouse had a few submissions in there, or at least like maybe 3 or 4 in a row. But no, never really strung along a long finishing streak there, or at least 4 titles or title defenses. And then Volk, I was like, okay, Volk had a KO'd or knocked out a lot of individuals, but no, it didn't really strung along, not too many. And then of course Izzy, Mr. Striker himself, did not create a lot of long finishing streaks. So yeah, surprise here. So you're not going to see these 4 greats in this list here, which for me was very surprising. So moving on to 3 honorable mentions before we go into the top 10, right? And I know I'm like stringing this along a little bit too much, but there's so much to look at, right? There's just so much here. And here's the thing, if I was looking at many fighters, I didn't look at all the fighters, so if I did miss anything, let me know in the comment section below. So one honorable mention is Henry Cejudo. His finishing streak here is a 3-fight finishing streak, was fantastic because he ended up just kind of retiring after this. Unfortunately, he came back, lost 3 in a row, and that kind of hampered his legacy in a sense. But funny enough, him trying to fight Ilia Topuria, right? So his streak started with TJ Dillashaw, which actually he finished, but TJ was tested positive for PEDs, and then he won the vacant bantamweight championship against Marlon Morris, and then his technically last fight before he retired, and then retired again, was against Dominic Cruz. Older Dominic Cruz, but he defended his bantamweight championship and then vacated and retired. So had to put Henry here as an honorable mention. Great 3-fight finishing streak here, and yeah, definitely good for honorable mention. The next one might surprise people, right? The next one is Conor McGregor. So Conor McGregor strung along a 5-fight finishing streak here. However, only 2 of them were for a title defense or a title. Of course, capping this streak here with that crazy 13-second KO against Jose Aldo, and the rest again were solid, right? Dustin Poirier is on here, but that was a much younger Dustin Poirier, not as a wily veteran as he is now. Of course, Dustin ended up ending, I won't say ending Conor's career, but putting a big damper on it after the 2 losses to Dustin. But everything else here they're great. The competition is solid, but not as good as I would say some of the other fighters that we talked about, or maybe not as long as a streak, even though this is a solid 5 finishing fight streak. So anyway, Conor McGregor coming as an honorable mention. Let's go into the last honorable mention here, and that is Poatan himself, Chama himself, in Alex Pereira. I don't fault Alex Pereira in this. This was a crazy accomplishment. This 4-fight streak here, that's very recent, last year to 2023, is amazing. But I don't know. I don't hold it as a higher regard than some of the other streaks that I had on this list here. So this started with him winning the vacant UFC lightweight championship against Yuri, and then defended it against Jamal, and then fought against Yuri again, and then Roundtree. Again, this is just recent of last year. Again, it's not his fault in terms of like the competition, but I think the level of competition right now in the light heavyweight division isn't as strong as it used to be. And I wanted to put this in the top 10, but I just felt like the other ones were just slightly better. So I can easily say that there's an argument to put this into the top 10 as a great finishing streak here. So all right, let's finally move into the top 10. After almost 9 minutes into this video here, let's start with how I generally cheat the number 10 spot and put 2 people on here. And I had to do it because I was like, I couldn't pick between the 2. I was like, either I put one in honorable mention or not, and I couldn't do it because I think both of these have a place here in the top 10. And that's starting with, well, actually, there's 2, right? 10A and 10B. And that's starting with Amanda Nunes, one of the greatest, if not the greatest women's fighter, UFC fighter of all time. She ended up defending her bantamweight with Raquel, then beating Chris Cyborg, and then Holly Holm. I think these 3 were amazing, and one of the most important thing about this was she was defending the bantamweight and then winning the featherweight championship against Chris Cyborg, and that was a big fight. Only lasted 51 seconds, but Amanda proved herself as the greatest women fighter of all time in that fight. So in history, that was an amazing moment. So I did have to make sure. So kind of going back over here to Alex Pereira, there wasn't anything legacy building in this on this streak here, but I think with Amanda there was, so I had to put her in the top 10. So coming in 10A, 10Bs, 10 whatever you want to say, it's up against, unfortunately, people are going to go, wait, how do you compare it to? Again, remember, these are finishing streaks of all time, not the greatest fighters of all time, right? So you have to put Ronda Rousey on this list. Now, technically speaking, she had a 12-win finishing streak when she started her MMA career, right? So if I make this bigger here, she started her career way back when in 2011. Oops, I gotta make this over here. And she did not lose until her 13th fight against Holly Holm. I believe it was Holly Holm that was kind of ended her career. And look at all the title defenses, right? So, but technically, because we're doing UFC here, she really only has a 6-win streak, which is still fantastic, one of the longer finishing streaks of all time. But you can say, okay, well, the competition wasn't all that strong. Of course, Amanda would have finished her no problem. But she wasn't around. They didn't fight, right? She fought Miesha Tate. She fought Sarah McMahon, Kat Zingano. So these fights were still relevant, but they're all being finished, right? They're all being finished there. So I think she definitely deserves a spot. If this was finishing streaks of all time, not just the UFC, just in total MMA, she might be in the top 5, going 12-0 in all finishes, right? Very impressive. So whether you love her or hate her, Ronda Rousey deserves to be on this list here, but she is going to share it with with Amanda, because I was like, who do I put this, like literally, who would you have to put in honorable mentions? I think both deserving in the top 10. Anyway, moving on to the number 9 spot, it makes it a little bit easier for me here, is going to be Khabib. Khabib's 3-fight to end his career and his legacy, I think it was historic in of itself. That fight against Conor McGregor was huge, right? Talk about a legacy fight, talking about, how big that fight was. This was a defense of the lightweight championship, and in almost dominating fashion, right? And that's what Khabib was, dominating fighter of his whole career. And he leaves undefeated after then beating a much more improved Dustin Poirier. These are all previous champs. Justin, I feel bad for Justin. Justin was is just wrong timing. Justin is good enough to have a belt around him, but just never got the opportunity to beat great ones in terms of getting that belt. So these are all 3 title defenses, and again, the legacy of this was Justin Gaethje's fight was the last fight of Khabib's career, and I think that this deserves to be in the number 9 spot in the greatest finishing streaks of all time. Moving on to the number 8 spot would be the individual that I think probably would have fought Khabib next, and that would be Charles Oliveira. Charles is very interesting. He has 2 sets of finishing streaks. He has one that none of them technically was for title defenses at all, but still is an impressive streak here. In how many is this? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. That is either KOs or submissions, and then of course Charles Oliveira has the record of most submissions in the UFC. And then you have this amazing 3-fight right here, and you see a trend here of a lot of these 3-fight submissions. You had Michael Chandler, you had Dustin Poirier, and then Justin Gaethje. So much similar to Khabib here. all three of them were, in a sense, for winning a championship or getting vacant. I could put Charles lower than Khabib because the last fight against Justin Gaethje, he did miss weight, right? So that is a little bit shameful on that end. However, because of the secondary winning streak here and finishing streak here, I did put a couple points up above Khabib here in terms of the finishing streak of greatest UFC finishing streaks of all time. So Charles Oliveira in the number 8 spot. All right, moving on to number 7 is Stipe. So Stipe, considered the greatest heavyweight of all time here, had an incredible finishing streak here that I would say this streak here cemented him as being one of the greatest heavyweights, and then the remaining portion of his career, put him in the greatest. You had Mark Hunt starting off of this, and TKO and Mark Hunt. That's a big boy. So that got him into the opportunity to fight Andrei Arlovski. That opened up the opportunity for him to actually fight for the title against Fabricio Verdum. And then at that point in time, Bigfoot was incredible. He's fantastic, and he was finished in the first round, which was unexpected. I would say I would have thought Verdum would have dominated that fight, but then Stipe said, "Yep, nope. I'm going to continue on with a streak here, beating Alistair Overeem, and then JDS, Junior Dos Santos." And I think that was his best win there in terms of defending those two heavyweights there. So, you have some great legends here in terms of quality of opponents. And then, 3 of these were in terms of title defenses or winning or defending winning the title or defending the title. So coming number 7 is Stipe. All right, let's go ahead and move on to where I put the reason why we're making this video here. Ilia Topuria. 3 legends he dismantled, right? Volk, one of the greatest in featherweight, right? Max, BMF champion, and then Charles, as you can see, he the greatest finisher of all time, and he finishes the finisher. Crazy, right? Crazy. So I could not put him in the top 5. You'll see the top 5 and you go, oh, okay, that makes sense. I think if he continues to string this along, this easily could be number 1. If he could do 2 more title defenses and finishes, I think this could be there. So I have him in number 6 on the spot here, and I don't know, some of you guys might have it a little bit higher, but again, you'll see why for the top 5. All right, so the 5th spot here was the hardest decision because I had no idea where to put this here because it kind of broke the rules. All right, and that's coming in number 5 here. This was either going to be 5 or number 1 by a long shot. Okay, 5 or number 1 in a long shot, and that is Royce Gracie. So Royce Gracie went 11-0 starting in the UFC. All right, 11-0. However, the beginning of the UFC is totally different than what the UFC is now. All right. I don't know if you can see this here. I got to make this bigger. All right. If you look at this, all right, UFC 1, he fought 3 times that night. Okay, 3 times. A quarterfinal, a semi is a tournament style. Quarterfinal, semifinal, and then he won the tournament. All right, won UFC 1. All right, beat Ken Shamrock, beat Gerard. All right, so then UFC 2. He fought 4 times. He had an opening round, a quarterfinal, a semifinal, and then won it against Patrick Smith. All right, wild. Okay, wild. That's 7 fights in whatever short period of time that is. And then you had him fighting against Chemo, but then Gracie then had a withdrawal, or he could have continued on and fought more. And then returns in UFC 4. And won that one against Dan Severn, right? So this was tournament style. This was 3 title wins, right? So at least I can say that there's title wins in a sense. But how he did it was just absolutely incredible. And guess what? All submissions. Every single one of them, all right? So 11 submissions, 11-0. Again, this could have been number 1 by a long shot. But because it's different, the style's different, I just said, you know what, at least it has to be in the top 5. So I just put him in 5. I had it at 1, I was like, yeah, it's just so long ago. UFC 1 and the tournament style is just so different. I don't know if the 11-0 makes a lot of sense to me in modern day UFC. Anyway, that's my explanation from why Royce Gracie, the legend, the icon, right, is in the number 5 spot. Again, you guys could probably defend in this being the number 1 spot. Anyway, moving on to number 4. I think the rest, other 4, very interesting, right? Very interesting. Coming in number 4 is Matt Hughes. If you guys don't remember this, Matt Hughes, this is back in 2004, started this finishing streak by beating a prime George St. Pierre, GSP. Yes, lost to Matt Hughes here, losing the or actually it was vacant. It was a vacant welterweight championship, and they were going for it, and GSP I think was the big favorite and ended up losing to an armbar. Then defended his welterweight title with Frank Trigg, and then Joe Riggs, and then Royce Gracie was like, "Hey, no, why are you submitting everybody here? Right? I'm gonna come in here. Let's see if you can submit me." They did a 175 catch weight, and then of course Matt Hughes was smart enough and just punched Royce Gracie, and he lost by TKO. So it makes a lot of sense there. And it ends with a finishing streak beating one of the all-time OG greats in BJ Penn. So I think in terms of level competition, in terms of beating goats and greats and icons, this is a fantastic five win finishing streak with TKOs and submissions. Pretty impressive. All right, so moving into the number 3 spot. So top 3, where does it go to? Well, of course, John Jones has to be on the list here. Interestingly enough, he didn't really have too many streaks. He had some decisions and then some victories and decision victories. This was kind of where where the streaks came from. I think he would have had a longer streak if he did not have that no contest with I can't. I'm totally forgetting his name now. Give me 1 second. Yeah, that was a total brain stop there. Daniel Cormier. So if they had no contest there, I think he would have got a few more, but this is his streak here. Starting with Brandon Vera and then leading into how he wins, beating Ryan Bader, which was a huge contender at the time. Ryan Bader into winning the light heavyweight championship against Shogun, right? That was a very interesting fight. That was regarded as probably John Jones's toughest competition until that time. And then all of a sudden he made it look kind of easy, and then defended against Rampage, and then defended against the Dragon, Lilium Nishida. So those 3 are legends in the sport, greats in the sport, and he made it look easy. So 3 title defenses here, a 6-win streak with legends on this list here. That's the reason why I have him in the number 3 spot. It's crazy. Even though, again, they're generally pride fighters, but Rampage Jackson, Shogun, they fought in the UFC for several fights as well. So, yep. All right, coming in number 2. Now, 2 and 3, I swapped. All right, I had this one at 2, and then the other one 3. I just like this fighter better. So this is totally subjective. All right, so I have number 2 as Chuck Liddell, the Iceman himself. I think this is a fantastic streak. It's a longer streak than John Jones, and I think this, in terms of legacy, is one of the greatest runs that really helped UFC to get where they are. And I know legacy wasn't a part of my rules in the beginning, but man, it's all started with. So starting with Tito. that rivalry there, starting with Tito, and then moving to win the UFC light heavyweight championship against Randy, the Natural Couture, Hall of Famer there, then defending, and then rematch against Randy, defended there again, defended against Renato, and then ending the streak here with another finish against Tito. In the 3rd round. That was also another incredible knockout there. I just really love this streak. It's one of my favorite streaks. Again, purely subjective. I think this could be lower objectively, but I have the Iceman at number 2. So coming number 2, Chuck Liddell. And then finally, there's probably no... yeah, there's in terms of how I'm ranking this and my rules in terms of this, there's no better finishing streak than Anderson Silva's streak here. It is a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 fight. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Yeah, 9 fight streak in either winning or defending. Right? Technically, there's 2 here that is lightweight bout went up there, and then there's a non-title bout against Travis Lutter because he didn't make weight, but technically it would have been a title defense here. But you're talking about Rich Franklin, you're talking about Nate Marquardt, you're talking about Rich Franklin again, Hendo finishing there. This was a incredible run that was combined with oh, I apologize. This was a 8 fight. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 8 fight streak here. Apologize because the last one there should not be on there. There you go. That looks a lot better. So 8 fight win streak and a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 title defenses. I think that's still the most out of all of them, right? Yeah, this is still the most out of all of them. So again, I think in terms of greatest streaks of all time, Anderson Silva has, a lot of streaks, win streaks, but yeah, finishing streaks here. I think he is going to be number 1, no doubt about it. And again, his win streak is even his defense streak is even a lot higher. So, that's the reason why he's one of the greatest of all time, and the reason why he's number 1 on this list here. So, let me know if I got this right. Right, I made some mistakes already just recording this video, but let me know if I got this right here. Number 1, Anderson Silva. Number 2, Chuck Liddell. Number 3, John Jones. Number 4, Matt Hughes. Again, this was just kind of a weird one. I was going to either put it at number 1 or number 5 here. I'm already thinking about putting it at number 1. So, Ilia Topuria, number 6. Stipe, number 7. Number 8, Charles. Number 9, Habib. And then 10A, 10B, Amanda, and Ronda Rousey. So let me know if I got that right here. And again, if you're new to my channel, like, subscribe, do all that good stuff. Let's see if I can find that slide. There we go. So with that, thank you all for watching. We'll catch you next time. Later.